Resourceful Designer, episode 143, 10 money-saving tips for freelancers.
Welcome to the Resourceful Designer podcast, offering solutions to streamline your graphic and web design business so you can get back to designing. And now, your host. He sleeps on the right side of the bed, Mark Dickote.
Welcome to the podcast. I'm so glad you were able to join me this week. In this episode, I'm going to talk about ways for you to save money while running your design business. I'm also going to talk briefly about the new Resourceful Designer community coming in 2019 before answering Kevin's question about cold emailing. So stick around for that. Now, I've had a pretty slow week this past week. I don't know if this is foreshadowing things to come in the next few weeks. Normally, things get really slow around the holidays. I don't know if you're the same as me, but most people that need design services tend not to think much about them around Christmas and New Year's, and then things normally pick up again in January. But I did a flyer for an old client that, honestly, I never thought I'd hear from him again, because the last time I talked to him, he told me his daughter was about to graduate from graphic design program at a college nearby. So I just presumed that she would be doing his work, but he contacted me to do a flyer, so I'm working on that for him. I've been asked by an old client. I did some podcast artwork a few years back, and it was an attempt of mine to do some illustration. And you know, I've mentioned on the podcast many times before, I am not an illustrator, but I did attempt to do some illustration, and they actually loved what I had done for their podcast. Basically, they sent me a photo of themselves, and I stuck it in Photoshop, and I traced it using lines to create an illustration. Anyways, I'm not going to go into the whole detail about it. But that was about 5 years ago, and the two hosts are now a little bit older, and they want the exact same thing again, but with some newer, updated photos so that they look their age. So I'm going to give that a go again. I'm a little nervous about it because, as I said, I'm not an illustrator. It takes me forever to get anything like that, and I'm never happy with the outcome. But if the client is, that's what counts. And I also threw in a business card design, and there's always websites I'm working on. So that's kind of been my week this week. Not as busy as normal, but there's always something to do. Now, as I mentioned in the intro, this week, instead of a resource of the week, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the new Resourceful Designer community and mastermind groups that I'm launching. If you listened to the episode I put out last week, then you've heard all about it, but I just want a couple of things. I've been reading up some articles that I just stumbled across about mastermind groups and some great tips in there about running a mastermind group and just what they're all about. So if you are not familiar with mastermind groups, I did describe them last week, but one thing I failed to mention is how a mastermind group is an accountability group. And what that means is when you have a group, a small group of people, 6, 7, 8 people that meet on a regular basis, they become accountability partners to you. You're all talking about your career goals, you brainstorm ideas, you ask questions of each other, and you motivate each other. It's a support group. But the accountability part of a mastermind group is the key that makes it work. And what I mean by this is, in a Facebook group, somebody might put out a post that says, I'm trying to get new clients. I don't know what to do. What do you guys do to get new clients? And some other people might comment on different ideas. And then one person might say, well, you know what? I'm going to set myself a goal that this month I'm going to send 10 emails out to people, cold emails or whatever. Well, they put that out and great. That's it. That was their comment. That's the end of it. But when you have a mastermind group and you say something like that, the other people in the group tend to remember that, and then they will come back to you and say, so did you send out those 10 emails? How did they work out? What's the response? So it makes you feel more accountable for things. If you say you're going to send out 10 emails this month, and at the end of the month they say, well, what happened with that? You don't want to be the person to say, well, I never really sent them out. No, if these people are holding you accountable for the things that you say, then it puts a little bit of pressure, but a good kind of pressure on you in order to do the things you talk about. And that's what my current mastermind group that I've been in for years, that's one of the things we do. Every quarter, we set goals for ourselves, what we want to accomplish. And throughout the quarter, we will often come back. How are you working on that goal? Do you need help with anything? What sort of progress have you made? And people report back. It's like, you remember I said, this is my goal? Well, this is what I'm doing. Or I've done this, or I still have this to do, but I'm going to be on target, or I'm going to miss my target, but here's how I'm going to adjust. So once again, a mastermind group is invaluable for anybody in a business. And that's why I wanted to include mastermind groups as part of the Resourceful Designer community. Now, the community itself will be open to everybody. And again, unlike the Facebook group where it's free, so there's thousands of people in there, the Resourceful Designer community will be made up of people who, first of all, they're paying members. So they're people that take their business seriously and are willing to spend a little bit in order to help themselves grow and get these partners, these people to help them out. But the mastermind part of the group is where the real benefit will be for the members. Now, I've already had people signing up, but just want to remind you that until December 31st, you can become a founding member of the Resourceful Designer community by heading over to Patreon at resourcefuldesigner.com/Patreon. That's Patreon. And when you make a pledge of $10 or more, you're automatically become a founding member of the Resourceful Designer community. But the $25 level will get you into the mastermind groups. And if you pledge $50, you become a member of my own mastermind group. And that one there is limited. I'm only taking 8 people total, and it's first come, first serve. And those people will form a mastermind group with myself as an equal member where we will share, we will help, we will hold each other accountable. The $25 level, I will be in as a moderator, but I'm not actually going to be a participant in the groups. But even if you can't afford the $25 or $50, just being a part of the Resourceful Designer community, because all these mastermind level people will have access to the community as well. And it'll be a great place to share, to discuss things, to ask for help, and yes, hold people accountable, even if they're not part of the mastermind. So I still haven't set the price, what it's going to be once it launches in January, but I can tell you once again that if you sign up to Patreon to be a supporter for $10, $25, or $50, you will become a founding member of the Resourceful Designer community, and those prices will be locked in for life as long as you remain a Patreon supporter. So if that interests you, head on over to resourcefuldesigner.com/Patreon, Patreon, and pledge your support today. And now, 10 money-saving tips for freelancers. Have you ever heard the saying, penny saved is a penny earned? My dad used to tell me that all the time when I was young, and it used to drive me crazy because every time I wanted to buy something, I'd want to go buy a pack of gum or I wanted to buy a comic book or whatever it was. My dad would say, "Are you sure you want to spend that? You know, a penny saved is a penny earned." And it used to drive me nuts. But now that I'm older and I'm working and I have to earn my own money, I can appreciate a little bit more. Now, if you're not 100% sure, the meaning of that saying is that any money that you have, either in the bank, in your pocket, whatever, the money you have that you don't end up spending is equivalent to the money that you are earning. Now, I know there can be various arguments or debates about that, but any money that you don't spend on something is money in your pocket that you can put to use somewhere else, and that you can't argue with. Now, chances are that, like me, you chose to become a designer because of your creativity and just your love of designing. You probably didn't become a designer because you wanted to become rich. That's one of the first things I tell people when they ask me they want to get into design, become a designer. I tell them, if you're a creative person, this is a perfect industry for you. But if you're trying to get into it because you think it's an easy way to make money, there's a lot of hard work in there, and it's not the richest of professions. Now, sure, there are designers out there that are making a very, very good living. Some of them racking in some major dollars for whatever services they offer. But for the majority of designers like you and I, most of us, we're just happy earning a decent and comfortable living doing something that we love. And I hope that's why you're in this as well. Now, for those of us that are in that later category, money is not really something we have to casually throw around. Yes, we might buy a small trinket or stuff here and there, but we don't have money flowing out to spend on whatever we want. And since money is one of the ways that we gauge how successful we are, how successful others are, I know it's a shame and all that, but money is one of the factors that's used in gauging that success. It makes sense to avoid unnecessarily spending your hard-earned money and trying to keep as much of it as you can for yourself, for those things that you really do need. And that's why I wanted to share these 10 money-saving tips for freelancers with you. And for the record, each one of these tips is something that I use in my business in order to save as much of my own hard-earned money as I can. So tip number 1 is to cancel unused or seldom used subscriptions. And this could be subscriptions to anything. Could be magazines, could be software, could be plugins, could be whatever. If you are subscribed to something or you're a member of something and it has a recurring payment and it's something that you are not using, you're not actually benefiting from it, why continue to pay for it? I remember a couple of years ago, I got an email to say my subscription to Mac Life magazine was coming up for renewal, and they were giving me this huge discount if I renewed it now. And I was looking and saying, wow, that's a really good deal they're offering. But then I looked at the corner of my desk where I had 8 months or 9 months worth of Mac Life magazines still sitting in their wrappers that I hadn't even opened. And it made me think that here I am. Yeah, it might only be $20 or $30 paying for the entire year, but I'm not reading them. So why should I continue paying that? So I canceled that subscription, and that, whatever it was, $30 was money I saved. Just last week, I received notice again, an email saying that a stock photo site that I belong to, it's a yearly subscription on the site for unlimited downloads, which sounds great. You pay one fee, you can download as many images as you want. But then when I saw the email come in, I thought, I'm not really using that site that much. I went into my account and I looked at my download history. And sure enough, over the past year, I had only downloaded, I think it was 12 images. I had done a lot of searches, but I realized that site, the photos, the images weren't the greatest. And I was always finding more appropriate or better photos on other sites. So the subscription, which was about $200, I think it was, for 12 photos, that wasn't worth it. So I canceled my subscription to that site, and I'll just stop looking there and I'll get my stock photos somewhere else. So that's $200 I saved myself by canceling that subscription. You can do the same thing with software plugins or stuff like that. Now, normally I always try to buy the lifetime deals whenever I buy a plugin if it's available, because then you never have to pay for it again and you can use it for as long as you want. But there are certain plugins that have a yearly fee if you want to keep using them. And sometimes, just the way technology is, better options come along. So when it's time to renew those things, have a look to see if there might be a less expensive option available to you, or even a free option available to you that's just as good, and you can cancel that subscription to the plugin. So that's tip number 1. Have a look at your subscriptions, your memberships, things you belong to, things you receive that you pay on a regular basis, and see if there's any of them that you can cut out that you're not really using, or maybe you are using them, but you're not using them to the full potential where it's worth paying the money. Like the stock photo site. I did use them. I downloaded 12 images from the site last year, but when I calculate that, that's almost $17 per image? Where the other sites I belong to, I can get them for $1 per image. So why would I pay $200 to renew that subscription? So that's tip number 1. Now, tip number 2 is to buy refurbished. Now, I don't know why some people think refurbished is such a bad word. Refurbished doesn't necessarily mean broken or not working or anything like that. It just means, in most cases, that it cannot be sold as new. Sometimes there was a small flaw in whatever that was repaired. I can tell you, my current iMac that I bought in 2017, I bought this brand new. I bought it the week they came out. I was in desperate need of a new computer. I was waiting for the announcement, and as soon as the announcement came out that the computers were available, I ordered one. But every previous Mac that I had before that, I had bought refurbished. And the great thing about buying refurbished is that, yes, you can get the current model, the newest one. You might have to wait, not like the day they come out. If you wait a month or so, then refurbished ones start showing up. You can buy the current model. And the thing is you still get the full warranty that you would get with a brand new one. So with my other Macs, my previous ones, I would save $200, $300, $400 depending on what I was spending on the computer. And it would be equivalent to buying a brand new one. So when I looked at that and I said, well, I can get this one here, spend whatever, or I can get the identical computer. It even comes sealed in the box, just like a brand new one, but save $400. It was a no-brainer. I bought refurbished. For the longest time, I was doing that with everything. I buy a lot of refurbished from Apple. Whenever my kids were growing up and they were buying iPods and whatever, iPad Nanos, iPod Touches, all those things. I bought all of them refurbished and saved a ton of money. But you can do the same thing with tablets. I keep talking about Apple because that's my most popular dealings with refurbished. But even when you look on other sites, and it's usually with electronics and that sort of thing, but whenever you're buying anything like that, look to see if there are any refurbished ones available, and you can save some big bucks. So that's tip number 2, buy refurbished. Now, tip number 3 is hire an accountant. You're running a business, whether you're doing this as a casual side gig whenever you have a chance, you're running it part-time while you're working full-time, or you're doing this as a full-time income. It doesn't matter. You're running a business. And if you're running a business, you should hire an accountant to do your taxes, just to run your books. Because no matter how good you think you are, unless you actually have an accounting background, chances are you're not picking up on all the little things, all the little intricacies that could be saving you money. Through the magic of whatever the accountant does, he can save you or she can save you a lot of money. So it's well worth the investment. Some people say, yeah, but an accountant can be expensive. Well, usually the amount of money that they can save you is a lot more than the cost of hiring the accountant. So if you don't already use one, I highly encourage you to hire one. Just do a search in your local area for accountants that specialize in small business or freelancers. So that's tip number 3, hire an accountant. Now, tip number 4 is one that a lot of people are not really comfortable with doing, but that's simply asking for discounts from suppliers. Now, I'm talking about things like your internet, if you do it through cable or phone or whatever, your phone, your cell phone carrier, if you have other services that you use, whatever, ask for a discount. The worst they can say is no. But I can tell you, at one point, I looked at my cable bill because that's my internet is through my cable company. And I looked at my bill one time and I said, this is getting ridiculous. And I called up my cable bill or my cable company. And I asked them, I says, listen, I'm not happy with how much I'm paying. I like the service and all that, but this is a little much. What can we do about this? And through discussion, we ended up realizing there was a couple of little things that I was paying for that I really didn't need. But then, just because I had been a long-time customer of them, I asked, is there anything else we can do? And they decided to give me a discount. They cut off another 20% off my bill just because I asked. And I've done that over and over. My cell phone carrier, when I called up, I didn't go into a shop and just buy a phone. I called up the company and I said, listen, this is what I want. I'm looking at your website. Here are the prices on your website, what you're listing and what your monthly plans are. Is there anything we can do better? And the person said, oh, hold on, let's have a look and all that. And I ended up getting an amazing deal just because I called them up. I didn't just go online and order a phone or walk into a store and order a phone. I called the company direct and got an amazing deal on my cell phone. And I've done that over and over. So whenever it comes to any sort of services like that, there's no harm in asking for a discount. The worst they can say is, sorry, no, we can't. But if you do ask and they do say, well, we can give you 10% off, take it. Penny saved is a penny earned. Now, tip number 5 is to use credit cards for your business that either give you some sort of point reward or cash back. Now, a lot of people already know about this one, but depending on what you're doing for your business, you need to purchase a lot of things online. I know I purchase hosting, I purchase domain names, I have to purchase plugins, stock photos and all that. Not to mention, since I also do print brokering, which if you want to know more, check out episode 49 of the podcast, resourcefuldesigner.com/episode 49. But since I do print brokering for my clients, there's often times where I have to purchase the printing and I put it on a credit card. So having a credit card associated with your business where you can collect points or cash back is a great way to save money. In my case, I have a credit card that I collect points for free flights. And there has been several trips I've gone on where I didn't have to pay for plane tickets. My wife and I will be celebrating our 25th wedding anniversary next year. And although we haven't decided where we're going yet, we want to take a nice trip, just the two of us. But I can tell you, I already have enough points saved up on my credit card for us to go just about anywhere we want. So they add up quickly, and some people like the cash back ones where, I don't know, every so often the credit card company will just send you a check for money. That's always nice. But since chances are you have to use credit for your business, you might as well use a credit card that gives you something back. In the long run, it will help you save money. Now, tip number 6 falls in line with the credit cards, and that's a low interest line of credit for your business. If you can, talk to your bank and see if they can get you a line of credit. Now, the reason you'd want a line of credit is, for one, the interest rates usually on a line of credit are much, much lower than on a credit card. I think my credit card right now has a 22% interest rate or something ridiculous like that, but my line of credit has a 4% interest rate. And what this is great for is those unexpected times when, if your computer breaks down and you need to go buy a new computer, it's not something you can get repaired, and maybe you don't have the money saved up. Yes, you buy the computer on your credit card, but maybe you don't have the money. I said you don't have it saved up. Maybe you don't have enough to pay off the credit card. You transfer the balance to your line of credit, and if you do end up having to pay interest, it's a lot lower than what you would pay on the credit card. I use this all the time with my print brokering that I do. I have one client. They've been with me since I started my business. And I know that client, when I invoice them, and they're not a client that I invoice in advance, but when I do invoice them, I know it's 90 days before I get paid. And I just learned to live with that. They're a really good client. They bring me a lot of work, but I know that one of the things that I have to deal with is that it takes 90 days to get payment from them. And when they order a $10,000 print job, I can't leave that for 90 days on my credit card, or, well, I could, but the interest is ridiculous. So I transfer that over to my line of credit, and then the interest I pay is only 4%. Now, I already know that's going to happen, so I work that into the cost to the client. So I'm double dipping there, I guess you can say, is I'm getting the points on the credit card by putting a $10,000 print job on the credit card, so I get a lot of points back that way. But then I transfer that money, or I pay off the credit card with the line of credit, so that I save all that money that I would be paying on interest while I'm waiting. And then when the client pays me, I pay off the line of credit. So over the years, my line of credit has come in handy for numerous things when I've had to buy equipment that was unexpected, or for whatever reason. It's always nice to have. So if you don't already have a line of credit, talk to your bank and see what you can do to get one. Now, tip number 7 is to save on your heating or cooling costs while you're working, depending on time of year or season that it is. Now, I know when I worked at the print shop, we at home here have a programmable thermostat. We can adjust the furnace up and down. Well, I know that when we were gone, my wife and I and the kids were at school, we would have it set so that the temperature would go down. Why bother heating the house or cooling the house when there was nobody home? And that would help us save on our utility bills. But when I started working from home, we noticed after that first year that the utility bill went way up because I wasn't dropping the temperature. During the winter, I was heating the house while I was here. During the summer, I had the air conditioner going, and our utility bill was reflecting it. So after that first year and a little bit of shock at the end of the year when we calculated everything and said, wow, like we had a big jump in heating or cooling costs, that's when I went back to the programmable thermostat and readjusted it so it drops. When I'm the only one home, there's no sense. I'm in my office almost all day. Why should I be heating or cooling the entire house? So during the hot months, I have a fan in my office to help me cool. Now, I'm not turning the air conditioner off, but I'm just not cooling it to the same temperature that I normally would. I keep the house a little bit warmer than would be comfortable, and then I compensate with a fan. The same thing for the winter. Why do I need to heat up the entire house when I can just get a small heater and heat up my office, or just put on some sweaters? I love wearing hoodies, so I'll wear a nice thick hoodie and work that way and keep the temperature a little bit lower in the house. And since I started doing that, I noticed that after that spike in subsequent years, our utility bills went down again because we weren't heating or cooling as much as that one year when I first started working from home. Now, I know it's not something you really think of as saving money, like it doesn't actually put money in your pocket right now, but over the long run, it will. So tip number 7 is save on heating or cooling costs by either dressing appropriately or taking care of the temperature in just your office instead of heating or cooling the entire house. Now, tip number 8 is look for coupons or discount codes before making a purchase. Now, not everybody is a coupon cutter or that sort of thing. And I'm not talking about when you go to the grocery store or that, but even online, when you have to buy something, it only takes a second to type in whatever you need to buy, type it into Google, followed by the word coupon or discount or code, and see what comes up. Every once in a while, you'll get something that'll say, oh, here's a code where you can get 15% off or 20% off or 50% off that you might not have known about. I do this all the time. And yes, this works great for physical products you're buying, but sometimes just services. Sometimes a software will have a special sale with one company where if you're belonging to their newsletter or something, they'll have a special code to give you a discount. And if you buy it anywhere else, you're paying full price. So shop around. Just like I promote year-round, I promote Divi from Elegant Themes because it's the theme that I use the most. Well, they just had a huge 25% off sale for Black Friday, Cyber Monday. But throughout the year, if you use my link, resourcefuldesigner.com/Divi, that link directs you to a page that gives you 10% off. And that's 10% you wouldn't get if you went directly to Elegant Themes and signed up through them. So do a quick search and look for coupons or discount codes before you make any purchase. Now, tip number 9 follows a similar path as the previous one, and that's simply just shop around for better prices. And what I'm talking about is for things like fonts or images or resources that you're using. You would be amazed at the different prices that are available from different sources for the same product. I designed a logo not too long ago for a client, and the client really liked one of the 2 fonts that I had used in the logo and asked me where they can buy that font. Well, I had actually purchased that font in a Design Cuts bundle that I had purchased years before. And when I went to look, the font was no longer available on Design Cuts. So I started looking around at where the client can buy this font, and I found it on probably a half dozen different websites before I stopped looking. But every website had the same font for a different price. And it ranged everywhere from $25 for the font on one site up to $200 on another site. And that's not the first time I've seen that. I've looked for stock images. There's been times where a client will supply an image that they found on Google and says, oh, I really like this image. This is the perfect image for whatever project we're working on. And of course, I'm not going to use a photo from Google, but doing a reverse image search sometimes will turn up where that image, especially you can always tell if it's a stock image, and sometimes it is an appropriate image to use. And if we're not budgeting for photography, that's the way we have to go. But that same stock image might be available from a bunch of different sites at a bunch of different prices. And I've had that happen before where a client handed me a photo or emailed me a photo, says, we really like this. We use this or something very similar? And I search for that and I find it on one site that, I can get it from whatever X website for $50 for the photo, or I can find it at another website. Oh, there it is for $20 a photo. Oh, look, the exact same one's on Deposit Photo. I can get it for $1. So be careful whenever you're buying anything, whether it's fonts, images, resources, shop around. Don't just buy the first one you come across. Make sure that you're getting the best deal. There's no reason to pay $50 or $100 for something that you can get at a different place for $20 or $10. And finally, the last tip for saving money as a freelancer is simply to wait for sales. Now, you may be thinking, well, duh, Mark, that makes sense. Really? Do you have to share that as a tip? But it's one of those things that sometimes you don't think of. I have a USB hub that's hooked up to my computer. Well, it went on me a couple of weeks ago. And I have a bunch of things plugged into it. It's to save me because my Mac only has, I think, 3 or 4 in the back, and I needed some extra ones. So I have this powered hub that's next to my computer that I plug a bunch of USB devices into. And something happened. It had been giving me some trouble. Some stuff were disconnecting. And finally, it just gave on me. It stopped working. And I immediately wanted to replace it. But I knew the Black Friday was less than 3 weeks away. So instead of jumping on Amazon or wherever and purchasing a new one right away, I decided to hold off for 3 weeks and make do with having to unplug and replug different things in the back of my computer. And I'm glad I did, because I picked up what I consider an even better one at less than the price it would have cost me to replace with the exact same one I had before. And of course, I've done this many, many times over the years. Now, obviously, we just passed Black Friday at the time of recording. Black Friday was last weekend and Cyber Monday that whole weekend. which offers some of the best sales of the year, but other times are depending on what country you're in. I know here in Canada, we have what we call Boxing Day, which is the day after Christmas, December 26th, and now it's Boxing Week, the week between Christmas and New Year. There's always huge sales that week. So that's a great time. If you're an Amazon Prime member, Amazon Prime Day is a great day to get amazing deals from Amazon. I know in the US, there's often President's Day sales and all sorts of whenever they have special holidays coming up, there's always special sales going on. So if you can put off purchasing things until those days, you can usually save a lot of money. And a lot of times the purchase you want to make is, again, it's a want, but not necessarily a need. Sometimes it's just a matter of waiting it out, being patient, and the price will drop. So there you have it. Those are 10 tips for you to save money as a freelancer. I'll go over them one more time here. Number 1 was to cancel seldom used subscription or memberships. Number 2 was to buy refurbished. Number 3 is to hire an accountant to save you money. Number 4 was to simply ask for discounts from your suppliers. Number 5 was make sure you use a credit card that has some sort of cash back or point system so that you can get something from it. Number 6 was get a low interest line of credit so you can save on interest rates if you have to carry a balance. Tip number 7 is to save on heating and cooling costs by dressing appropriately, and use a heater or a fan so that you don't have to heat up or cool down the entire house when you're just using one room all day long. Tip number 8 was to find coupons and discount codes before making a purchase. Tip number 9, shop around for better prices. And finally, tip number 8, if you can, wait for a sale. So there you have it, 10 money-saving tips for freelancers. Because we work hard for our money, might as well keep it for as long as we can. Now, I would love to know if you have any money-saving tips that you would like to share. Head on over to resourcefuldesigner.com/episode 143 and leave it in the comments for this episode. Now, I have a question of the week here. This one here comes in from Kevin. He says, I've been running a web design business for almost half a year now. My current problem is reaching out to new potential clients. What is your take on cold emailing and how would you go about it? Well, thank you very much for the question, Kevin. Now, I'm not a big proponent to cold calling or cold emailing. What I like to do, if possible, is what some call a warm email or warm call. And what that means is reach out to somebody that you've already have contact with. You don't want to pitch them on the very first email you send. So it's almost like starting a conversation with them or starting a relationship with them before you actually try to sell them on your services. Now, one way to do this is, you said you're in web design. What I would do is I would go look at the websites for potential clients. Hopefully they have a website. If they don't, then that's a different issue. But say you find a client that has a website and it's an old, outdated website. Look around to see if there's anything that's wrong or doesn't work or that's broken on the website. Maybe it's an old website and have a look at it on your phone to see if it's mobile responsive. Then I would send them an email. In the email, make sure you mention that you are a web designer, but don't offer your services or anything. Just say something to the effect is, I'm a web designer, and as I was looking at your website, I noticed that it wasn't or it isn't mobile friendly. It's not responsive. And I just wanted to let you know that I was having a little bit of trouble navigating through the site because of that. And then say something like, in case you're not aware, Google penalizes websites that are not mobile friendly. So I thought I'd just drop you an email and let you know that this is something you may want to look into. Regards, sign your name and have web design or whatever. And leave it at that. Now you've created a rapport with them so that maybe a month, 2 months down the road, you have a look if their website is still the same. Then you could send them an email and say, I reached out to you a couple of months ago. I mentioned that I had a problem with your website. I was looking at it on my phone and I was having some trouble. I noticed that nothing's changed. If you need help with this, I offer this sort of service. Just reply to this email and we can start the discussion to see what we can do to fix your website. So at that point, it becomes a warm email, not a cold call. You've already started a conversation with them. You've let them know something. And maybe the next time you go visit the website, you'll see they have a brand new mobile responsive website. And you kind of go, oh, well, you did your part, you tried, and that's it. But they will be much more inclined to appreciate you if you start small like that. Now, if you go visit their website and they have a beautiful new website and then you kind of think, well, they don't need my services, you can still reach out to them and just mention, says, hey, I'm a web designer, and let them know. Say something to the effect is, I was looking for clients that I could send an email to, possibly partner up and work with them on their website. And when I came across your site, I realized you don't need my services. You have a really nice site. By the way, give my compliments to whoever designed it for you. They did a really beautiful job. But if you ever do need some web design services in the future, please keep my name in mind. Now, the reason you do something like that is maybe they ended up with a beautiful website from their designer, but they really didn't like working with that person. They had a hard time with them. And maybe going forward, they may want to go with somebody else. So you reaching out to them like that, again, not selling your services, just mentioning that you're available, they might keep you in mind. Or maybe the company who designed the website is really expensive, and this person you're reaching out to, maybe they need a website for, who knows, their son's local hockey team or whatever. They're starting a side business and they need a website, and they don't want to hire this big company that did it. They want to deal with somebody a little bit more in their budget range. So they might look to you for a different project. So it's more of a matter of just getting your name out there. Now, one thing you should do is never just send an email saying, hi, I'm a web designer, here are my services, blah, 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 blah. Those rarely work. You have to kind of create a rapport with them, make them feel like you are talking just to them and it's not a form letter that you're sending out to dozens and dozens of companies. Make it feel like you're taking an interest in them. For an example, I get pitched almost every week. I get an email saying, hi, I'm so-and-so. I love what you're doing with the podcast. Can I be your next guest? Well, right there, I know this person has no idea what my podcast is. I've put out, this episode is 143. I've had 2 guests on the episode in 143 episodes, and both of those guests were before episode 15. Since episode 15, I haven't had a single guest on the show. So when I get an email with, I love what you're doing with your podcast, can I be the next guest? I know these people have no idea what I'm doing. They never looked at it. Now, the odd time that somebody sends me an email saying, I love what you're doing with the podcast. I really like this episode. I notice you don't normally have guests on the show, but if you do decide to have guests, I would love to be on, and that sort of thing. I don't necessarily want to have guests on the show, but I will pay more attention to those emails because I feel like they took the time to get to know me. So the same thing happens when you send an email out to a client or a potential client. If you make them feel like you know them, or that you're talking directly to them and not that you're talking to dozens of people you're trying to get as a client, they may be more inclined to listen to what you have to say. So mention any interactions or familiarity you have with the company. You can say something like, I've shopped with you before, or I was looking at this product on your website thinking of buying it, and that's why I was looking at the site. Or say something like, I have a friend of mine who uses your services, or my parents, or whatever. Let them know that you're familiar with them, and your email will go much further that way. The last thing is, don't send a long-winded email. Be very precise, very short. If somebody opens up an email and they see an essay written there, chances are they're not going to read it and they're not going to reply to it. So keep it short, to the point, get in, get out, and hopefully that'll work. And lastly, whenever you are writing, try not to sound like a salesperson. Yes, technically that is what you're trying to do, but if you make it sound like a salesperson, people are less inclined to want to reply to you. If you make it sound personable, like you're trying to build a relationship, then there's a much better chance for them to get back to you. So that's my take on your question. I don't do a lot of cold or even the warm email, but anytime that I have, I've always tried to connect with them without actually selling them anything. I always make sure they know that I am a designer and what I do, but I don't necessarily try to sell them right there. Just letting them know who I am and what I do is good enough to start off with. Then if I want to follow up later on, then I can mention something in a conversation that I'm available if they need to work or would like to work. So anyways, that's my take on your question, Kevin. Hopefully it's an acceptable answer and that you can use some of that. As I said, I don't do a lot of that sort of thing myself. I haven't in years. Once you build up a clientele, most of my work now just comes from word of mouth referrals or repeat clients. But if I had to, those were the steps I would take. So thank you very much for your question. Now, if you would like to submit a question for a future episode of the podcast, you can do so by visiting resourcefuldesigner.com/feedback and submit your question there. Now, I'd love to share another iTunes review I've received recently, or Apple Podcasts review, I should say. And this one is from Adestavox in the USA. It says, awesome podcast. I was searching for graphic design podcasts, and I'm really happy to have found this one. It's so fun to listen to and has helped me in many different aspects of my business that I needed improvement on. I haven't been disappointed. Thanks for an awesome podcast. Well, thank you very much for that review. Love getting these. You know, I'm up to 89 reviews right now, and I would love to do a push to see if I can get to 100 before the end of the year. I know that's asking a lot, 11 more reviews before the end of the year. I usually get 2 or 3 a month. But if you haven't left one before, now's your chance. Help me get to 100. I would love that. Visit resourcefuldesigner.com/iTunes, which should redirect you to the iTunes store in your country, directly to the Resourceful Designer page where you can click on the Leave a Review tab and write your review. I would love to get those, and if I can get up to past 100 reviews worldwide by the end of the year, that would be amazing. So thank you very much for listening. I do appreciate you sticking in to the end. I'll give you a little heads up. Next week's episode is going to be about mistakes that freelancers make. So make sure to tune into that one. If you're not already subscribed to the podcast, do so at resourcefuldesigner.com/subscribe and then never miss an episode. And don't forget, you have until December 31st to sign up as a founding member of the Resourceful Designer community by becoming a Patreon supporter at resourcefuldesigner.com/Patreon, that's Patreon, and submitting a pledge of $10 or more. And a pledge of $25 will get you into the mastermind groups, and a pledge of $50, and you'll become a member of my own personal mastermind group. So that's it for this week. Until next time, I am Mark Dacote, wishing you all the best with your graphic design business, and as always, reminding you to stay creative.
Thanks for listening to the Resourceful Designer Podcast at resourcefuldesigner.com.